I pushed the front door open and said, "Emily, I'm home." No answer. I stepped inside and froze. My suitcase sat near the wall, zipped and upright. My chest tightened. "Emily." I called again. She walked out from the kitchen slowly. Her arms were crossed. Her face looked calm, almost bored. "We need to talk," she said. I laughed once. "Why is my bag packed?" "You're leaving tonight," she said. I blinked. "Stop joking." "I'm not joking," she replied. I looked around the living room like something might explain it. Did I miss something? She sighed. "This isn't working anymore." "That's what this is." I asked. "A bad joke?" "It's over," she said. "I want you out." I shook my head. "This is my house too." "It was," she answered. "What does that mean?" I asked. She looked past me. "It means I'm done pretending." I heard footsteps behind me. "Emily." I said. "Who's here?" Ryan walked out of my bedroom. He wore my hoodie. My hoodie. "Hey," he said softly, like this was normal. My stomach dropped. "What is he doing here?" Emily said, "I told you he was just a coworker." Ryan looked away. I laughed again, but my voice cracked. "You lied." She didn't deny it. "I didn't plan for you to find out like this." "You planned this?" I asked. Ryan said, "Man, I didn't want it this way." I snapped at him. "Shut up." Emily raised her voice. "Don't talk to him like that." I stared at her. "You're protecting him now." "He makes me happy," she said. My hand shook. "I worked late every night for you." "I didn't ask you to," she replied. "You asked for everything," I said. She said, "I've been unhappy for years." "Then why stay?" I asked. "Because leaving was hard," she answered. Ryan cleared his throat. "I'll wait outside." Emily nodded. He grabbed his jacket and stepped out. I stepped closer to her. "So that's it?" "Yes," she said. "No counseling?" I asked. "No," she replied. I whispered, "I love you." She looked tired. "That's not enough." I felt tears burn my eyes. "Please don't do this." She said, "I already did." I grabbed my phone. "I'll call Mark." She shook her head. "Don't." "Why?" I asked. "This doesn't need to be dramatic," she said. I laughed bitterly. "You threw me out." "I gave you time," she replied. "You gave me nothing," I said. She walked to the door and opened it. Cold air rushed in. "You should go," she said. I looked at the walls I painted. "I built this life." She answered, "Not anymore." I picked up my suitcase. "You changed the locks?" "Yes," she said. I stepped outside. The door closed behind me. The lock clicked. I stood there shaking. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. Through the window, I saw Ryan return. I realized then my marriage didn't end. It was erased. I sat in my car and whispered, "So this is it." The streetlight above me flickered like it was mocking me. I leaned back and said, "You really did it, Emily. You actually did it." My phone buzzed. Mark's name filled the screen. I muttered, "Not now," and tossed the phone onto the seat. I stared through the windshield and asked myself, "When did you stop loving me?" The silence answered back. I scrolled through old photos and laughed under my breath. "Look at us," I said. "So damn happy." Her smile looked real back then. Now it felt staged. My phone buzzed again. "Please call me," Mark texted. I typed, "I'm fine," then erased it. I wasn't fine, and I didn't want him to hear it. I rubbed my face and whispered, "Where did I mess up?" Emily's voice echoed in my head. "You're never home." I answered the memory out loud. I was working for us. The car felt smaller with every breath. I checked the time and sighed. Midnight already. Great. Mark called again. I answered, "I can't talk." He said, "Where are you right now?" I replied, "In my car." There was a pause. "I'm coming to get you." I said, "Don't. Please." The call ended, and silence returned. I stared at a house across the street and thought, that could have been ours. I opened my gallery again. Emily smiled in every picture. I said, "Were you lying the whole time, or did you just get bored of me?" My stomach growled loudly. I laughed softly. Guess I don't get dinner tonight. Minutes dragged into hours. I talked to myself because there was no one else left. I trusted you, I said. I loved you, I added. I chose you every day. I remembered her laugh, her promises, her hand in mine. I whispered, did any of it matter? Near dawn, my phone buzzed again. A message from Emily appeared on the screen. Don't come back, it said. I read it twice. Then I laughed, sharp and bitter. Wow, I whispered. Just wow. I typed, after everything, but erased it. I locked my phone and tossed it aside. I rested my head on the steering wheel and said, I won't beg. The words felt weak, but I forced myself to believe them. My chest hurt as the truth settled in. The house I paid for was gone. The life I built was gone. I whispered, you don't get to own me anymore. The sky slowly brightened, and I promised myself one thing. If I survive this, I said, I'll never let anyone break me like that again. Exact word count, 750. I slid into the booth and said, I don't even know where to start. Mark pushed a menu aside and said, start anywhere. I stared at the table. Emily threw me out. He didn't interrupt. She packed my bag, I said. Changed the locks. Had him there. Mark asked quietly, the coworker. Yes, I said. Ryan. Mark exhaled. I'm sorry. I didn't see it, I said. I really didn't. He said, tell me everything. So I did. I talked until my throat hurt. She said she was unhappy for years, I told him. Mark asked, did she ever say that before? No, I said. She said she was tired. That was it. He nodded. What else? I begged, I said. I actually begged. Mark clenched his jaw. That's not weakness. It felt like it, I replied. He leaned forward. You didn't deserve this. I laughed without humor. Apparently I did. He shook his head. No. Silence stretched. Mark finally said, you can stay with me. Not yet, I said. I need to think. After breakfast, I sat in my car and opened my laptop. I logged into the shared cloud account. I whispered, please be empty. It wasn't. Messages filled the screen. I read one and said, wow. Another message said, I miss your arms. I said, she wrote that to me once.
Photo loaded.
Hotel rooms. Mirrors. Beds I didn't recognize. I scrolled and said, this is a schedule. Dates lined up perfectly. While I worked late, they met early. While I traveled, they traveled too. I whispered, it was planned. My hand shook. I said, you smiled at me after this. I clicked a folder named Future. Inside were screenshots of apartments. Ryan wrote, once is gone. Emily replied, soon. I laughed loudly in the car. Years, I said. Not months. Years. My phone felt heavy. I called Emily. She answered, what? I said, I saw everything. She was silent. The hotels, I said. The messages. She sighed. I figured you would. I asked, how long? She said, does it matter? Yes, I replied. Almost 2 years, she said. I closed my eyes. You planned my exit, I said. I planned my happiness, she replied. With my money, I said. She snapped, I didn't force you to work. I said, you forced me to trust you. She said, you should move on. I laughed. That's it. What do you want me to say? She asked. I want the truth, I said. I was careful, she replied. I didn't want drama. I whispered, you erased me. She said, stop being dramatic. I hung up. I sat there breathing slowly. Something inside me cracked. Something else stood up. I wiped my face and said, "Enough." I wasn't crying anymore. I was thinking. I said, "You don't get my tears now." Mark called while I drove. "Did you talk to her?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "She didn't care." He said, "Come over." "I can't," I replied. "Not yet." "Why?" he asked. "Because if I stop now," I said, "I'll fall apart." He was quiet, then said, "I get it." I parked and stared ahead. I said, "She planned my life without me." Mark answered, "That says everything about her." I said, "I feel stupid." "You were loyal," he said. "That's not stupid." I laughed. "It feels like it." "Listen to me," he said. "You survived the worst part." "I slept in my car," I said. "And you're still standing," he replied. I ended the call and opened the messages again. I reread them slowly. I said, "No more surprises." I listed dates out loud. April, June, September. Each one landed like a punch. I said, "I won't forget this." I closed the laptop. I sat back and breathed. I said, "Crying won't fix it." I remembered her voice telling me to move on. I answered the memory. "I will." But not the way she meant. I said, "You don't control the ending." The car felt steady under me. For the first time since that night, my hands stopped shaking. I said, "Think." I thought about money. I thought about work. I thought about proof. I said, "You left doors open." I smiled slightly. "Careful people still make mistakes," I said. I drove toward my rental room. On the way, my phone buzzed again. A message from Emily appeared. "Please don't make this ugly." I said out loud, "You already did." I didn't reply. I blocked the number. I felt calm. I said, "This is the last tear." I wiped my eyes once. After that, they stayed dry. I whispered, "You woke the wrong man." I whispered, "I will survive this," and for the first time, I believed myself completely without hesitation. Right then. Finally. I unlocked the door to the rented room and said, "This is mine now." The room was small, quiet, and empty. I dropped my bag and sat on the bed. "At least you didn't lie to me," I muttered to the walls. My phone buzzed. Mark texted, "You settled?" I typed, "Yeah." He replied, "Proud of you." I stared at that message longer than I should have. At work the next day, Claire stopped by my desk. "You look tired," she said. I answered, "Long nights." She nodded. "If you need help, just ask." I almost laughed. "Thanks." Later, we shared coffee in silence. She finally asked, "You okay?" I said, "Not really." She replied, "You don't have to explain." That made my chest loosen. That night, she messaged me. "You home?" she asked. "Yeah," I typed. "Want to talk?" I hesitated, then said, "Sure." We talked until midnight. I told her pieces, not everything. She listened. She didn't fix me. She didn't pity me. She just stayed. Emily called the next morning. I answered calmly. She said, "We need to discuss the divorce." I replied, "Send it in writing." She scoffed. "You don't have a lawyer." I said, "You sure about that?" Silence followed. She said, "You're being difficult." I answered, "I'm being careful." "You're broke," she snapped. "Not desperate," I replied. I hung up and dialed Daniel. He said, "I reviewed everything." I asked, "Do I have a chance?" He said, "You have leverage." I smiled slightly. Emily texted again. "You're dragging this out," she wrote. I didn't reply. At lunch, Claire said, "You seem lighter." I shrugged. I stopped chasing. She smiled. "Good." Ryan sent a message that night. "Can we talk?" I blocked him without answering. Emily tried again. "Why won't you respond?" I read it twice and locked my phone. Mark called. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm planning," I replied. "That's new," he joked. That's growth, I said. The silence worked. Emily grew frantic. She sent longer messages. She demanded calls. I gave her nothing. Claire asked one evening, "Does it feel good?" I answered, "It feels calm." She nodded. Calm is power. I sat alone that night and said, "I won't beg anymore." The words felt solid. Daniel emailed updates. Emily delayed paperwork. Ryan lost patience. I watched from a distance. I whispered, "Revenge doesn't need noise." The room stayed quiet. I liked that. I slept without dreaming. For the first time, silence felt like control. I walked into the office early and said, "Morning." Helen looked up and said, "You're early again." I replied, "Figured I'd get ahead." She smiled. "I've noticed." Later that day, she called me into her office. "You've been working hard," she said. I answered, "I needed something to focus on." She nodded. "I'm recommending you for the new role." I blinked. "Seriously?" "Seriously," she said. When I left her office, I whispered, "So this is what effort feels like." At lunch, a coworker said, "Haven't seen Emily around lately." I shrugged. People drift. He hesitated. "There are rumors." I said, "There always are." My phone buzzed that evening. Emily's name flashed. I answered, "What?" She said, "Ryan quit his job." I replied, "That's unfortunate." "He's stressed," she said. "I'm not his manager," I replied. She sighed. "People are judging me." I said, "You didn't mind judgment before." "That's not fair," she snapped. I answered calmly, "Neither was cheating." She hung up. I stared at the wall and felt nothing. Claire noticed my mood the next day. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said. She stuttered me. "You sound empty." "I'm peaceful," I corrected. She said, "Peace can turn bitter if you let it." I asked, "Is it wrong to enjoy distance?" "No," she replied. "Just don't lose yourself." Mark called that night. "You hear about Ryan?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Karma's working fast," he joked. I answered, "It's just starting." Another call came from Emily. I answered silently. She said, "Why won't you talk to me?" I replied, "You talk. I listen." "That's cruel," she said. "So was lying," I answered. She complained about money. She complained about friends. She complained about loneliness. I let her speak. After she finished, I said, "Anything else?" She paused. "No." I said, "Goodbye." I ended the call and exhaled slowly. Claire messaged me, "Coffee after work?" I typed, "Yes." Over coffee, she said, "You look stronger." I replied, "I stopped explaining myself." She smiled. "That helps." A mutual friend texted me later. "I didn't know," she wrote. I answered, "Now you do." Days passed. Emily stopped pretending. Ryan stopped trying. Their life cracked quietly. I watched without celebrating. I watched without interfering. I learned patience. One night, Claire said, "Do you want revenge?" I thought carefully. "I want peace," I said. She nodded. "Then don't stare too long at their fall." I went home and whispered, "Karma doesn't rush." I sat in silence and added, "But it never forgets." I sat outside the courthouse and said, "This shouldn't scare me anymore." Daniel adjusted his files and replied, "It won't, once it starts." I nodded. "She thinks I'll fold." He said, "She's wrong." Inside, Emily avoided my eyes. I whispered, "You look nervous." She snapped, "I'm not." Daniel leaned toward me. "She is." The judge spoke, and Daniel stood. He said, "We have evidence." Emily stiffened. I watched her hands tremble. Daniel said, "Financial manipulation." Emily protested, "That's not true." Daniel continued, "Infidelity with documentation." Emily whispered, "Stop." I stayed silent. Daniel said, false claims intended to pressure settlement. The judge looked at Emily. She finally looked at me. Her eyes searched my face. I felt nothing. She mouthed, "Why?" I didn't answer. Daniel showed messages, dates, photos, transfers. Emily said, "You planned this." I whispered, "You taught me how." The judge dismissed her claims. Ryan wasn't there. I noticed the empty seat beside her. During a break, Emily rushed toward me. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. I said, "Because I can." "You're not this person," she said. I replied, "You never knew me." She whispered, "I thought you were weak." I answered, "I was tired." Court resumed. Daniel finished calmly. The ruling landed heavy. Outside, Emily blocked my path. "Look at me," she said. I did. "Why did you change?" she asked. I said, "I didn't change." She waited. "I woke up," I added. Her voice broke. "We could have fixed it." I said, "You fixed it your way." She whispered, "I made mistakes." I replied, "You made choices." She reached for my arm. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. That night, I sat at the small desk in my room. The final papers waited. Mark called. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "You won." "I finished," I replied. Claire texted. "How did it go?" "It's done," I typed. "I'm proud of you," she wrote. I signed the papers slowly. Each signature felt lighter. I said out loud, "No joy." The room stayed quiet. "No anger," I added. I folded the documents and whispered, "Freedom." For the first time, that word didn't scare me anymore. I heard the news from Mark first. "She lost the house," he said. I replied, "I figured she would." He asked, "How do you feel?" I answered honestly, "Nothing." Later that day, Emily messaged me. The text was long. "I never thought it would end like this," she wrote. I read it once. I didn't reply. Another message followed. "Ryan left when things got hard." I whispered, "Of course he did." She kept typing. "I'm scared." "I'm alone." "I made mistakes." I locked my phone and went back to work. Claire noticed. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm thinking," I replied. She asked, "About her?" I nodded. That evening, we walked together. She said, "You don't owe anyone forgiveness." I answered, "I know." She added, "Especially not yourself." That stopped me. I said, "I'm trying to forgive me." She smiled gently. "That's the hard part." Emily sent another message. "I miss you." I read it slowly. I felt nothing. At work the next day, a friend whispered, "She's struggling." I replied, "I struggled too." Claire and I shared coffee later. She asked, "What scares you now?" I said, "Trusting again." She said, "You don't have to rush." I nodded. "Thank you." That night, Emily called. I let it ring. She called again. I answered. She cried immediately. "I don't know who I am without you," she said. I replied calmly, "You chose that." She begged, "Can we talk?" "We are talking," I said. She said, "I've changed." I answered, "So have I." "Then give me a chance," she pleaded. I said, "I already did." She showed up at my workplace the next morning. She stood there shaking. People stared. She cried, "Please listen to me." I said quietly, "This isn't the place." She whispered, "I have nothing left." I answered, "I rebuilt from nothing too." She reached for me. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. Her voice cracked. "I love you," she said. I looked at her and felt only distance. I said, "I don't hate you." She looked hopeful. "I just don't feel anything," I added. She collapsed into tears. I walked away. Claire waited outside. She asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes." We sat in silence. I finally said, "Love shouldn't feel like a cage." She replied, It shouldn't. I realized then the fall wasn't loud. It was quiet. And I was already gone. I arrived at the cafe and said quietly to myself, "This is it. No turning back." Emily was already there, seated alone, hands twisting the napkin. I walked in and said, "Hi." She looked up, startled, and whispered, "You came." I nodded. I said I would. Her voice shook. I want to apologize." I leaned back. "Go ahead." I never should have." "You don't need to explain," I interrupted softly. "I already forgave you." Her eyes widened. You forgave me." I nodded. "Months ago. The moment I stopped letting you control my emotions." She lowered her gaze. "I didn't realize." "You didn't need to," I replied. She swallowed hard. "I was selfish. I ruined everything." I said, "You made choices. I just let go of the weight of them." She asked quietly, "Were you ever real to me?" I looked at her carefully. I was real. Every moment, even when you weren't. Her lips trembled. I wish I had seen it." I shook my head slightly. Too late. The waiter approached, placing water in front of us. "Thanks," I said, and he walked away. Emily whispered, "I thought you'd still care. That you'd hate me." I said, "I don't hate you. I stopped letting hate live in me." She blinked, tears forming. I expected. "I don't know. Something. Anything." I whispered, "I expected nothing." Emily reached across the table. "Please, can we fix this?" I pulled back slightly. "No. Not this time." She lowered her hands. "I understand." I nodded. "You have to live with your choices. I have to live with mine." She looked at me long, searching. "Did we mean anything?" I replied, "You meant something to me. That's enough. But I am not yours anymore." Her voice cracked. "I never realized how much I lost." I said, "It wasn't mine to lose. I just stopped giving it to you." Silence fell between us, heavy but calm. "I wanted to see if maybe you'd forgive me fully," she whispered. "You already have," I replied softly. Emily's eyes glistened. I truly am sorry." I nodded. "I hear it." "And yet," she said, hesitating, "we can't go back." I answered, "No, we can't." I stood and said, "This is the last time." She nodded, tears rolling freely. "I don't deserve your calm." I replied, "You don't need to earn it anymore." Her hand trembled as she tried to reach mine. I stepped away. "Don't." The moment was strange, quiet, without confrontation, without fury. I whispered, "Winning doesn't have to be loud." She looked at me, hopeful, confused, broken. I turned, letting my back face her. I felt nothing but relief, not anger, not love. Outside, Claire was waiting by the car. She smiled when she saw me. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I am," I replied. "I feel lighter than I have in years." She nodded, taking my hand. "Then let's go forward." I held her hand firmly. "Forward," I said. Emily watched from the window as we walked away. I didn't glance back. Not once. I felt free in a way I hadn't known possible. I whispered under my breath, "No more chains." Claire squeezed my hand. "I'm choosing the future," I said. "Not the past." She nodded. "Good." I smiled faintly, finally calm. The cafe disappeared behind us as we walked down the street. The sun hit the pavement, warm, like a promise. I said quietly, "We can build something real now." Claire smiled. "We will." I took a deep breath. For the first time, I didn't feel hollow. I didn't feel lost. I only felt free. I whispered one last time, "I no longer belong to her. I belong to me." And that was enough. Sunlight poured through the windows of my new apartment. I stretched and whispered, "Finally." The space was quiet, calm, mine. I walked to the kitchen and ran my fingers along the counter. "This is mine," I said softly. I poured coffee and sat by the window. Mark called earlier. You seem different, he said. I replied, I am. You sound lighter, he added. I laughed quietly. I guess I am. Claire texted me. Morning, she wrote. I typed, morning. Coffee later. She replied with a smiley. Of course. I felt warmth at the small interaction, simple, real. I looked around the apartment. No reminders of Emily. No pictures, no arguments, no late-night heartbreaks. Just sunlight and silence. I whispered, this is what peace feels like. I thought back to the night she threw me out. The suitcase by the door. Her words cutting through me. Ryan in my bedroom. All of it. And I remembered how my chest had tightened, how I felt small, defeated. I smiled faintly. Funny, I said aloud. That night wasn't the end. It was the start. The phone buzzed again. It was Emily. I read her message silently. I'm sorry for everything. I set the phone down. No reply. No anger. No tears. I whispered. I didn't destroy her. I outgrew her. She made her choices. I made mine. That was enough. I sipped my coffee and thought about love. It shouldn't cost self-respect. It shouldn't demand submission. It should build you up, not break you. I said quietly, finally, I understand. Claire arrived a little later. You look happy, she said, leaning against the doorframe. I am, I said. It feels good. She smiled. It should. You fought for it. I nodded. And I stopped fighting for people who didn't deserve me. We sat at the table, sipping coffee. She asked, do you ever think about her? I answered honestly, sometimes, but not the way I used to. She tilted her head. Not with anger. No, I replied. Just distance and understanding. She reached for my hand. Distance can be beautiful, she said. I smiled, squeezing her hand. Yes, it can. I walked through the apartment, opening windows, letting the breeze in. Everything felt clean, new. I whispered, months ago, I thought I lost everything. Now I see what I gained. I remembered the messages, the hotel photos, the lies, the betrayal. I remembered the nights in my car, the lawyer, the silence, the quiet revenge. And I realized, none of it mattered anymore. Only this matters. I moved to the living room, looking at the sunlight hitting the floor. Freedom, I said. I felt it in my chest, steady, calm. Not explosive, not loud. Just mine. Claire sat beside me. You've changed, she said softly. I have, I replied. I woke up. She smiled. And you kept yourself. Yes, I whispered. This life belongs to me. I thought about the nights of heartbreak, the pleading, the anger, the silence. Every moment led here. Every tear taught me strength. Every betrayal showed me boundaries. I said quietly, I survived it all. I looked at the empty walls and imagined the future. Not a perfect life, but a real one. One I chose. One I built. One that respected me. I whispered to the empty apartment, I am mine. And for the first time in years, I believed it. I walked to the balcony and looked at the city below. Sunlight reflecting off glass and streets. People moving, lives continuing. And I felt part of it, whole, unbroken. I smiled without pain. Claire leaned against me. Ready for today? She asked. I nodded. Yes, every day from now on. I took a deep breath, letting it fill my chest. This, I whispered, is my life. And it was. Quiet, strong, peaceful. Mine. I closed my eyes briefly. The memory of being thrown out didn't hurt. It was a distant shadow. I said softly, that night didn't end me. It saved me. I opened my eyes, sunlight on my face. The apartment, the coffee, Claire, the freedom. All real. All mine. I smiled again, this time fully. And for the first time, I didn't need to explain it to anyone. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need approval. I just existed. and it felt perfect.